pleasure to be here with such an esteemed panel and an audience in which there are so many change makers who are already creating change and those who have the potential to create a lot of change in the future. I would like to thank Rabia and Asfar for inviting me and for arranging this whole event. So, work reimagined, are we ready to adapt? And started thinking about what does it mean, work reimagined? I think the first thing which comes to the mind of most of us is the technology part. And we have talked a little bit about it already, and we will be talking more about it as well. But technology is not the only thing we need to think about. There are so many other angles. The human side, the socio-economic angle, the cultural side, the if you start thinking about it, how will there be more equity in the future because of this? Will there be less equity? So when we reimagine work, we have to think of so many different angles that we are thinking of. Move beyond that and we talk about, are we ready? When we talk about we, are we talking about the corporate sector? Are we talking about small organizations? Are we talking about the education sector? We're talking about Gen Z and the future generation and how they're different. So are we talking about the Gen Z? Are we talking about the different generations? Are we talking about the financial services sector? Because I do have a few panelists, 3 panelists from that area. So which angles are we going to look at when we talk about reimagining work? Are we ready? Who's the we ready? Are we ready to adapt? And then my question also will be, are we ready to adapt? Or are we ready to shape what's coming next? Because adapting and shaping what's coming next are also, there's a difference between the two. So with these very broad thoughts, I would request my panelists to first share their views about when we talk about work reimagined, are we ready to adopt? So work reimagined, se aapke dimag mein kya aata hai? And I think you can start with Sami.
Thank you, Dr. Sadia, and thank you, Asfar and the team, Nutshell, for giving this opportunity. To answer your question, it has been subject to constant changes, from industrialization to internet to more technology, AI recently, and the changes have been very, very constant. The difference is that previously the changes were generational changes, the disruptions were generational changes. Now these changes are coming on literally on yearly basis. Every year there's something new, number one. The second important, before we get into more details, the context that we need to understand, that in our organizations today, we have 4 different generations working for us, from boomers to Gen Zs, Gen Zs to alphas, alphas to millennials. Now, for the first time ever, the Gen Zs are the generation who were born in the digital era. The alphas who are still not yet there, they're right there at the corner, but they are the most hyperly connected generation that would also get into a workplace. So in a workplace, the opportunity is to provide a work environment where all the 4 generations could thrive together. Generations who are, example, if you talk about Gen Z are the people who are more flexible on a hybrid working environment. Work from home, they can work from office. If you go back, if you talk about boomers, I see a good mix of all the generations in this hall as well. Boomers, they prefer to establish an in-person connect. They prefer to stay in the organizations for the longer durations. Gen Zs are the one who are more hybrid. They want more independence. They want more empowerment. And when Gen Alpha will come into the workspace, it's going to be a different one. So how does an organization provide a working environment where all the 4 generations could thrive together? How well an organization is prepared to get the best use of technology and to be future ready for the new technology advancements that would come is what I would understand from the word work reimagined.
Thank you so much. So more generational differences, more creating that environment. And Shoaib, work reimagined, reimagining work.
What's the main for me? Well, once again, thank you for this opportunity. Great to be here. Reimagination. Well, the way I see it, reimagination is basically about evolution and adaptation. It's a norm. It's the one constant that we'll always have. It's not limited to work. It's in every aspect of life. And if we have to progress, it's something that has to be part and parcel of who we are and what we do. And what that means is, if you just expand that word reimagination, what it really means is innovation. Being able to innovate, being able to be a value-adding entity, regardless of which sphere of work or life that you are a part of. And my colleague just here said something very interesting, which is about being future ready. And if you look at it from an organizational perspective, then of course, here I am representing a state-owned enterprise. We all know what that means. The moment we say Sarkari Adara, an image must go, flash through your minds. But at the same time, innovation, adapting to change is something that is fundamental for us. And, in a very short span of time, even state life has adapted these changes in terms of bringing value, with the focus of value to our customers, focused for value to our clients and stakeholders, and in creating an enabling environment for our workforce so they can feel part of a bigger change. What has that meant? It means 300% growth in profits over the past 4 years. It means doubling our profit to our policyholders. It means setting up an entire digital system where more than 1,000 hospitals are digitally linked. So this is all part of evolution. And if we don't do that, then it's not just about surviving as an entity, but the bigger question about serving to a wider society. And if we want to be valuable partners to that, we have to innovate, we have to evolve, and we need to continuously reimagine.
We'd really like to hear more about some very specific initiatives about how the Sarkari Idara is reinventing itself for the future. But let's give the others a chance to sort of start sharing their views about reimagining work. What do you perceive?
Since I'm a third generation entrepreneur, and I've actually seen my father running the business when I was a kid, 9 years old. And to be very honest, we actually use the terminology of state culture and the corporate culture. So being in Peshawar, setting up a manufacturing unit over here back in 1985, and seeing my father work through all those challenges, but in a very concise way, in a very different way from the way that we actually do things now. There was no technology. It was all paperwork. It was a lot of secrecy at that time as well. People doesn't even used to share where they're actually getting their imports from, because we're an import-based economy. So going forward, as a kid, as a 9-year-old, trust me, I used to actually kind of visualize. I kind of used to imagine that, okay, fine, one day when I'm going to grow up and I'm going to step into my father's shoes, what am I supposed to do? How am I going to do something different? So what my father did was actually, because you need to understand how you want to reimagine it. So understanding that, being a son of an industrialist, it was always you're born with a silver spoon. So you have a tag that, okay, fine, and even in the school and the college, you're taken care of. So I did have, वो कहते हैं ना कि थोड़ा सा सरिया था बचपन में. So what my father did was he actually got me into a sales job at the factory. So when I actually went into the market, a lot of people who are here from Peshawar can actually can you understand the dynamics that I'm talking about, the places that I'm talking about. Khyber Bazaar in People Mandi, this is the local market over here, densely populated and everything. So I used to go there, do sales. And after that, when I actually done that, वो होता है थोड़ा सा वो सरिया कम हुआ, नखरा कम हुआ. Then coming back, when I graduated, my father put me into a banking sector. So for a 1 year good, I actually worked for ABN AMRO, jab Royal Bank of Scotland ban gaya tha. So what actually happened, I actually tried to understand that, okay, fine, what are the needs, what are the requirements of the people for whom we are actually reimagining the whole thing. So it's not only about technology, it's giving them the comfort as well, because for every sector, it is different. For manufacturing, it's quite challenging, to be very honest, because it is the last one that I will actually say is going to adapt. Yes, they are adaptable, but it's going to be the last one. Tech would be the first one, because the Gen Z, even us millennials, we actually are from the generation, we have seen all the eras coming from the cassette ke zamane se leke coming to the USB and the phones and all these things. So going through that, it is more of an evolution. and absorbing that and understanding that, okay, fine, this is something that needs to be done. Keep bringing in the life and work balance. Because back in the days, there was a time, I will tell you, my father used to come back for his lunch, and I'm sure everybody else can relate to that. We don't go back to lunches at our homes. We actually go back by 7 and we still say, or 8 o'clock in the evening, and we still say that we are actually having a very good life and work balance.
And then come home and check a few emails and do a few more things.
Exactly.
Yes.
So what we need to do is we need to understand, we need to put our feet in everyone else's shoes and need to understand. Like I said, one size is a very famous saying, one size won't fit for all. So you need to tailor it. You need to understand that what kind of requirements are there.
Completely understand that, and the Zahur Group has a portfolio of a variety of
11
companies. Yes, and you said manufacturing would be one of the last ones to change. And a very surprising fact which I found out was that the manufacturing sector, there are about 200 million gig workers in the manufacturing sector in China, and it was one of those sectors where I had not imagined that it'd be a gig economy, but they are operating in a very different manner. So it's manufacturing workers and our gig workers who just do their short contract there based on different apps, systems, which are portals, which are there, which was a surprise to me. A very
agreed. Like I said, one size doesn't fit for all. Yes. So it's a global thing. Like for China, the dynamics are different. For Pakistan, they are different.
I would request Irfan Sab to say something. And it's if you want to talk about the reimagining work, or if you want to talk about who should be doing most of the reimagining or taking up initiatives, feel free to sort of elaborate on that as well.
Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity. Okay, I will say that for me, reimagining work is basically divided into two parts.
Okay.
One is the technology, and the other one is the human part. When I say technology, I mean, there is an extensive use of technology over the period of time. I mean, if you compare the past and the present, I mean, the way the work is being done, the way the entire ecosystem has now come to a design, there is a drastic change. I mean, there is a quantum leap, the way the work is being done. So when I say reimagining work, the involvement of technology, the involvement of AI is something which is redefining how the work is supposed to be done and how the organizations have to adapt to the changing use of technology. The other one is the human part, and one of the panelists has already addressed part of it, is to understand that there is a combination of different generations we are dealing with. Millennium, baby boomers, and Gen Z. So every generation has its own preferences. For example, if it comes to the rewards structure, I mean, for me, I mean, I might be more interested in my well-being or something to do with, the general environment. But for Gen Z or millennium, they might be more interested in the reward today. I mean, so we have to understand both technology and human part. So these two elements, if they are taken care of and the organizations are able to hit the right talent advantage, understanding these aspects, I think those organizations are going to flourish. Those organizations are going to be some which can capitalize on these two areas, which is the technology and the human part. So this is how I define reimagining the work.
And same question to you, because you're trying to all understand the panel's view on what is reimagining work, because I can think of it from 10 different angles. So just
More surely, but I'm sure that all of us can well imagine and relate to it, that when you talk about the future of workplace, that future of workplace is already here. Because we'd all relate to the fact that we are living in an age of tech disruption. All of us, just a few years back, we had gone through the cycle of COVID, and overnight we had seen that the entire workforce had gone from on-site to remote working. So those disruptions, the most important thing, giving reference to the same bit, is that also being on the academic side, you understand that the biggest challenge or the biggest factor that needs to be considered is the adaptability part of it. And going forward, especially in this tech age, it is said about organizations that no longer it's the big that will eat the small. it's the fast that will eat the slow. So you have to be adaptable. So, when we talk about AI, we talk about RPA, we talk about cloud computing, we talk about all these buzzwords. The most important thing at the center of it all, like my esteemed panelists mentioned, is the human factor. So an interesting bit I'd like to share, because like many organizations, even in our organization, we have a lot of discussions and brainstorming around, the new future tech, let's say AI, RPA, and how will it impact the human capital. So the most important aspect is that, there's a fear factor among the existing workforce about redundancy. But we need to understand that as business leaders, we need to upskill and reskill the existing workforce. And at the same time, the human element will remain to be at the center of it all, because the biggest and the contributing factor about the human capital is that the empathy, the creativity part of it, and even, let's say, critical thinking is something which will always remain centered to the human person. So while we talk about adaptation of new technology, so we spoke about industrial revolution, we spoke about other tech. So we are at that same cusp where we're looking towards embracing the new technology. So it's always, you can never look at the new tech from the current horizon. So there's always a shift in the paradigm curve. So we're looking towards that shift in the paradigm curve, and as the conversation progresses, I'd love to share that, my views on how AI can change the entire concept and perspective, because the customer is not just external. You're also serving your internal customers within the organization. So it's a very interesting debate.
So, continuing with this discussion, you're talking about upskilling, reskilling, adapting, change. We're all talking about that. Want to talk a little bit about, and we all understand that we need to do that if we want to progress at an organizational level and at a national level. I take it to as individuals, as organizations, at the national level, we need to do all this. I want to start with, I want to shift the discussion to side. Who is responsible for creating this shift, and how can we create this shift so that we are more ready? The change is there, but how can we be more ready? And we can be we, or we can be whichever way you define it. So I think we can continue with the conversation with Rehman Saab.
The perspective is that while the HR division by itself, you'd love to pass the buck onto them, that's not the starting point. But the whole perspective is that we as parts or cogs of the wheel of the larger machinery, we need to remain relevant. And like I mentioned, so the human capital or the human skill will always remain relevant, because, tech is only supposed to, maybe augment your skills, or maybe it'll improve the pace of or rate of change. Because I'll give a very, very small example about AI. We talk about a lot of theory, but one practical example of AI, especially in the pharma sector, when we talk about introducing any new drugs. So there's a clinical trial which goes about years and maybe decades before any new drug hits the counter or it's available over the shelf. But with AI, the kind of iteration that you can do, so that years of clinical trials can actually happen in a couple of months. So that's the power, that's the computing power. Then you talk about banking sector that I'm related to. So it's all about experience transformation. So it's not about a paradigm overnight. It won't create that night and day shift, but it's all about creating that small impact on a daily basis. I'll give you a real life example of Faisal Bank as well. We, at any bank, since you've also dealt with a lot of banks, one of the biggest pain points is the customer interaction. So you've got a lot of queries and questions at the call center coming in, 10,000 calls a day. So ever since we launched our chatbot, which is OpenAI connected, so it's not just one of those dumb chatbots. So you connected it with the AI chatbot. So now 30% of our queries are handled not even with the human interface. People don't want to wait for connecting the call for about 5 minutes and waiting to speak to another person on the other end. So, this is the kind of disruption that we're looking at. And like I mentioned, it's not that HR or management somewhere, or maybe, the IT guys sitting in the data centers, they cannot bring about that change. So the change has to come top down, but it has to be driven internally as well, that you have to upskill, reskill, and, you need to remain relevant in this changing age.
So change is coming more top down, and it's very much because of technology. Is that a sort of reasonable summary there?
Well, that's right, because as business leaders, of course, sitting all of us in this room, we are responsible for creating the change.
Rehan Saab, who's responsible for the change, and how can we make it something which is more beneficial for the organizations and the nation as a whole?
Responsibility for the change, I think it's, as I earlier said, it's mainly technology driven, and the way the businesses are being done or the way the things are being done, and because there's lots of involvement of technology. But how do we tackle it, and which components are responsible to ensure that we adapt ourselves properly for what is coming in the future? I think it's the entire ecosystem. I would not say that it's just the employer. I would not say it's just the employee. I think it starts from policy making, because when you talk about flexible working hours, when you talk about remote working, this will obviously require some policy measures as well. Talking about the employee part, I think I was reading the World Economic Forum Future Job Report, latest report, and that was highlighting certain skills which will be necessary going forward. I mean, next 3 to 5 years. And I think those are the skills which the employee part needs to take care of if they want to be ready for what is coming in. So that's obviously, I mean, the soft part that also had sustainability into it, that had technological, skill sets which are there. And coming to the employer part, so having understood all these dynamics and having understood the employee preferences, I think they need to create a talent advantage. And how can they do that? They can inculcate the usage of technology. They can understand the preferences of their employees, and they can incorporate those into their policies, and so that they are able to understand, they are able to corroborate with the requirements. And I think the topmost will be the use of generic AI, and how we incorporate that in our day-to-day working. So these are some of the things which I feel are to be done. And so just to summarize, so it's the entire ecosystem which has to play the part.
So, if I ask, we're talking about policies and guidelines and how they need to be rewritten, refined in the reimagined world. Are we talking about organizational policies, or are we also talking about national level policies, and are we ready at that level as well? Because when we start talking about AI, and sorry for bringing in the term, but we start talking about fintech and crypto, and so are we ready at the national level for the world that is coming, not just the organizational level? So just extending what you were saying.
That's a brilliant question, actually. And I personally feel that no, on the national level, we are not ready, to be very honest, keeping in mind the policies of the government. Because when we actually talk about working from home and doing like freelancing and those kind of things, so still, if you actually go into the labor laws and if you go into the UBIs and all of those kind of things, so we still have nothing on that. Mm-hmm. And up till this point, to be very honest, no one is even working on that right now. So there is a huge gap which has to be covered. And I believe in this, there has to be a liaison between the government and into the industry, and be it like, when I said that, okay, fine, like there is, like when you actually like talk about like different industries, it's not just manufacturing, the health sector is there, the technology is there. So for all of them, it has to be some different policy. Like initially, a fellow panelist, we actually talk about like that we have like different generations of workforce now. So with different generations, there are going to be different rules and laws as well, because the Gen Z, to be very honest, because we have an IT company as well. One of the 11 companies is an IT company as well. And we have a huge problem. One, there's a brain drain. And we always talk about that, okay, fine, like we go to all these events and it's very unfortunate. And I've actually, there was an event in Karachi. I would not call out the minister who it was, but he was like just trying to like, that we have done this, and I want so many people in an auditorium of 2,000 guys and like girls that I want you guys to go out and send us remittances to Pakistan. And I went to the stage after him and I said, why don't we come up with the policy, sir? So we can actually detain them rather than like he sent in, okay, fine. India has done that, but India is a 1 billion population. We can't compare ourselves to them. And none of us have a success story that, okay, fine, not a single Pakistani has actually become a Google CEO or anything like that. Why don't we actually build something indigenous here in Pakistan? And for that, we don't have the policy. So like summing it up, like the government, to be very honest, needs to work really closely with all the industries to like come up with the policy, how to do that.
So when we say, are we ready, as I said at the beginning, we would mean me as an individual, me as belonging to an educational institution, we as belonging to different organizations, the national level policy guidelines, the laws that you're talking about.
There is a difference.
So,
as a nation,
as a
nation is a different level.
yes.
Because as organizations, as entrepreneurs, yes, we are. But as a government, we are not. Because the entrepreneurs, the organizations, they have that urge and they want to do that. And they're actually doing that.
I would also request other panelists to put in a little bit of their, share a little bit of their views about this, because we would start talking about organizations, and they're the large corporations, the very successful corporations, or the banks which are the leading edge banks. And then we start talking about small organizations as well. And then we're talking about individuals who are studying in universities such as FAST, and they're individuals who are living in remote areas and who don't have a lot of exposure to education. So are we ready? To me, it's a question of, are we ready in all the different individual levels, in all the different sectors of all different types of organizations? So with that, सरकारी इदारे, NGOs, आपने कह दिया, सरकारी इदारे, NGOs and small organizations which are placed in more remote areas, unki readiness, what can you share about that?
I think the first aspect is realization. Realizing a change is required, and then imagining or visualizing what that change should be. The critical thing is, as you're highlighting right now, what happens in rural areas versus urban areas. And I think it's a very, very important point that you're raising, because the change required and how you execute and implement it will be different based on the environment that you're working in. Is it small scale or large scale? Talking about tech, what happens in Silicon Valley is going to be very different from what happens in Peshawar. And we should not replicate what's happening out there, because the ground realities are different. So now coming back to, okay, how do organizations actually deliver on that? It's about, on a very basic level, I don't like the chicken and egg question, to be honest, that, should it be government policy, or should it be an SME, or should it be in-house or otherwise, because that you literally are falling in a chicken and egg situation there. What it really is the individual impetus and a realization of what we need to do right now. So to give you a very small example, you mentioned fintech. So when fintech and insurtech came around, though it may have been very well established out in the West, I remember I was in Hong Kong at the time. So for countries like Hong Kong and Singapore, we didn't even know what insurtech or fintech meant. And it was literally as if you were grappling at straws. While the regulator tried to push some policies in a sandboxed manner, but that was basically the regulator learning themselves and to what policy will work and what will not work. Similarly, firms and companies were looking at what is this and how do you adopt it? And what does it mean by fintech? Aren't we already digitalized? What is this new thing that they're talking about? So a lot of this is about change management, but it's also about learning as you go along. So I think it becomes a little unfair to say a fixed policy should come in. I think it's stakeholders coming together. And now talking about, to give you a very specific example of the Sarkari Adara, like you mentioned, or what does it actually mean? So you see, again, we didn't wait for any government policy to come through, even though we are Sarkari Adara, we work as a commercial entity. And we drove change, from a legacy institution, which most people will know as, I think most people 4 years ago when I came in, recognized State Life by a jingle from the 80s, 𝗍 ख़ुदा मेरे अब्बू. And I think that's as far as the understanding of the organization went. But where we've gone through, I'm quite happy to say, it's a financial powerhouse, not only in terms of life insurance, but what is done on the health side, the digitalization of the health system that is delivering across provinces, be it Balochistan, KP, Punjab, and even in Sindh, what it's done in terms of corporate health, rolling out solutions, and now what it intends to do in voluntary pension scheme. I think the KP government has done quite a bit in taking a lead on pensions, but what solutions we roll out, what does longevity risk, for example, means. Now I'm saying that word on purpose, because yes, it is that Sarkari Adara that is leading the way on it and not waiting for any policies. But while we do that, and I think you raised a very important point about talent and skill, we have to make sure that our working environment is conducive enough to attract talent, retain skill, nurture them and grow them. Because one thing about Gen Z, Alpha might be too young, but Gen Z, even the younger millennials, is that they've got, itchy feet. If they're not happy, they move. So you have to give them purpose. So the conversation, if you really think about it, the conversation, from back in the boomer days, used to be about take a job and stay there till retirement, because that's when the pension's going to kick in. And I remember, even when I was interviewing back, as a graduate, the question turned from not that can I be here for the next 30 years, but what's the purpose? How are we going to contribute to the environment? What's the bigger the bigger vision of this organization? So all of these things are there.
So just talking about this during the break, and the question was, how is the next generation different? As somebody who deals with the university students, so how are the students, the youngsters who are coming along now, how are they different? Can they focus less? Do they study less? I said, whatever they feel passionate about, they would give it 110%. So it's a very different culture that we have to create in organizations as well to keep them engaged, and they'll not stay because they've just found a pakki naukri or they've just... So yes, coming back to you, जो हम बात कर रहे थे NGOs, अलग-अलग sectors की, कौन से sectors, कौन से individuals, who is actually ready for this change? If you'd like to comment on the broader spectrum, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. So before I come to your answer, I'll just like to highlight one fact. When you talk about nations, you look into developed, underdeveloped, emerging. One of the very important criteria that defines if the nation is developed or underdeveloped is the Human Development Indexing. Where do we stand today as a country? We are ranked 160th out of 194 nations in the world. What does that mean? So SDI में 3 components होते हैं. Number 1, access to health. Number 2, standards of living. And number 3 is the education. So here we are today. Now, to answer your questions, so in my point of view, there are 3 important stakeholders who have the responsibility to drive this, not only the government. Number 1, the colleges and the universities, because the colleges and the universities are the suppliers of talent to the organizations, to the corporates across the globe, across the country. So they need to make sure that in Pakistan, that they are digitally fluent, that they are providing the work, the study or the class environment in a way where they should learn to collaborate. And as we spoke about 4 generations and pandemic, etc. The second important stakeholder, of course, is the government. Where we are today, I think my fellow colleague already answered that really well. But the responsibility of government remains to provide resources. And I think first thing first that we need to do is that the government needs to talk more about the education development and the education fund also. What most of the time when we see our ministers and our senior stakeholders talking about the performance, they'll talk about the GDP growth, remittances, FDIs, but they would really talk about how much are we investing in the education and what are we doing to develop our human resources. That's very, very important. And the third, of course, are the corporates. Corporates are equally responsible. So I can briefly talk about what is the philosophy at Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola philosophy has 2 stakeholders, people first and the technology. We work on 4 areas from a work reimagination point of view. Number 1 is flexi working hours. What we have learned, as we spoke about, background, 4 generations, different mindset. Pandemic told the world, taught everyone that you could be as productive as when you work from home versus working at the offices. So we have very flexi working hours, and our philosophy is work that works. You can work from a mobile location, you can work from a house, and of course you can work from the office. When you come to the office, all our offices in the last 3 to 4 years have been redesigned. So you would not find rows of desks or workstations in our office. You would find rooms, creative rooms that basically fosters collaboration, that fosters creativities. Even in the workstation areas, there are bigger workstation areas with sofas and bean bags around them, because we want to make sure that when all the 4 generations they come to the office, they feel like home. When you work from home, you don't sit on your chair throughout the day. You're on your bed, you are on your table, you are on your bean bags. So that kind of environment. The third and the most important after the people, of course, is the technology. We are highly adaptive to the technology. Last year, Coke globally did sign a 5-year contract with Microsoft, a $1.1 billion contract to bring in cloud, to bring in advanced AI technologies. Coke as a company globally started using generative AI before ChatGPT. We have Copilot on my laptop. I have my Coke GPT that helps me to be better in terms of when if I'm working on my presentation, I can put things there and it would give me a very well-refined version. Our sales operations are both digitally enabled and also AI integrated. There's a difference between digitally enabled and AI integrated. When an auto booker today goes to the outlet, we serve over 300,000 outlets in Pakistan. All he or she needs to do is to put the stocks that are there on the shelf, and the order is automatically generated based on different algorithms. We use AI in our supply chain forecasting, our sales forecasting. Globally, it has helped us to reduce the downruns on our plants by 30%. It has helped us to improve our efficiencies also. The last and the most important one, again, is the inclusivity and the development of our people. So the 3 people enablers and 1 technology enabler to help us redefine the work reimagination. And the 4th one is about how can we bring more inclusivity? How can we give more power to our team members?
Thank you for some very interesting ways in which your organizations are already reimagining the workplace and how we at a larger level, at society level, need to do more about it as well. I'd like to open the floor for questions. If we can take a few questions from the audience.
Thank you so much. My question rather shikwa hai Ayub se. So you're the man of this land, and okay, tell me something about myself. I'm Dr. Arif, an Austrian Fachhochschule certified academician. इमरान खान ने भेजा था हमें यूरोप के वहाँ पे एजुकेशन सिस्टम स्टडी करें and then come back and let's do something here. We've been doing it successfully. हरिपुर में हमने पाक ऑस्ट्रिया यूनिवर्सिटी बनाई. It's been हमारे कुछ स्टूडेंट्स भी $3 million तक की कंपनी भी उनकी चली गई. I'm recently dean at City University. तो वही reforms के through we developed 75 products and they're especially कुछ MVPs हैं, कुछ workable products हैं. But the problem is when we go to the investors, the investors are the real sharks. They'll say 50% मुझे दे दे, 80% मुझे दे दे, and we'll give you this much. आपने ठीक है बना लिया and that's it. So या तो आगे नहीं आते, जब आगे आते हैं तो they would literally want to eat up everything. So this is to Zakudis and people like you, the men of this land. Why don't you come up, talk to us? Why don't you come up and reimagine the world where industrialists like you come sit, work together with the educationists and with the new, like हमारे जो Gen Z
जी
की
बिल्कुल कुछ बड़े interesting ideas हैं यहाँ पर.
जी
Good. जी please.
मैं आपको जी आपका शिकवा, since I'm the son of the soil, is pretty valid. But I'll tell you one thing, because we are meeting for the first time, I guess. Or you can actually ask all the startups in KP and across the country as well. I am one of those people whose doors are always open. I'm an angel. I'm the first and only angel investor from KP. I don't think that you know that. I have already invested in certain startups. आपके नासिर साहब जो हैं, since you have actually talked about, he knows me very well. And recently I've not met him. लेकिन having said that, there is, yes, जो आपने एक बात बोली is very valid. और investors को, क्योंकि Pakistan is a very new country. It's like very new to this concept of startups and everything. So we need not only to train the startups, but we need to train the investors as well. Because I always speak about these things, that we actually, when the investors end up buying off a 40 or 50% of the company, so they rather kill the founder. Uska jo interest hota hai, it actually dies out, because this is just a seed investment. And after that, when you have Series A and Series B and further investments, by the end of the day, instead ke bhi 4% आपके investor के पास होता, so ultimately the founder is left with nothing. So this is somewhere I totally agree with you, and I'll actually appreciate, to be very honest, I believe he's here, Asim, जो कि NIC Peshawar को, he's actually heading that. They have actually done that twice. Abhi recently there was an investor training summit in which they actually piled up a few हमारी industrialists or like business people from KP and even from Islamabad as well. and they brought in some trainers from Dubai and US, and they actually tried to teach us how we are supposed to invest. So this is something that we need to do, or all of us we need to do. So it's not only my job, it's like accumulative, like you have to do that, I have to do that, and whenever you need me, I'm always there.
Thank you so much. Questions, reimagining work, what would you like to ask the panelists?
Assalamu alaikum ji. I'm Babar from Ipsos. दो क्विक क्वेश्चंस हैं.
Sure.
एक तो ये कि बहुत सारे जेन जी और बहुत सी जेन जनरेशन की बात हो रही है और सब लोगों ने अपने अपने कमेंट्स बताए हैं कि व्हाट डू दे कंसीडर. व्हाट आर द सोर्सेज यू आर बेसिंग ऑल ऑफ योर अजम्पशंस अपॉन? वो कौन से सोर्सेज हैं जो पाकिस्तानी जेन जी के बारे में आपको बताते हैं कि जिसकी बुनियाद पे आप मुख्तलिफ फैसले कर रहे हैं? सेकेंड, ऑल ऑफ यू मस्ट बी ट्रैवलिंग अ लॉट अब्रॉड. How do you compare Pakistan Gen Z people as compared to the rest of world Gen Z people? These are two questions.
When you talk about that Gen Zs or Gen Alphas are more digital savvy, why do we say that? We say that because Gen Zs are the generation that were born, the Gen Z era started from 1997 and it lasted until 2011. This was a time era and period where internet was exposed. So they are the generation who were born in the internet ka era one. And Gen Alphas were, when they were born, there was Facebook, there's Instagram, and when the comment is being made that Gen Alpha are hyperly connected generation, it means that they use multiple platforms. For them, the first source of information today versus our generation, for us, it was our parents. For them today, it's on the mobile. So they are more quicker, more agile in terms of learning different things versus the learning pattern and the development that we went through or the generations earlier went through. So there are factors that defines how different generations would work. Basis which the comments that were being made in terms of they feel more independent because for them, the source of information was themselves through their handhelds versus their elders or versus others around them. And because of these different enablers and dynamics, there are certain patterns that are being drawn. And these patterns, they do not vary or differ so much from one country to another. They are something which is, quite common. And hence we say that now the world is a more global world. It's a more interconnected world. So
And
this
I
was
mean,
the
if
context,
I
and
say-
different, of course, studies as well, which in our case, of course, are being presented to us by our local teams, our regional teams, and the global teams.
And if I say that, I think in our generation, there was more of a difference between people who were living in different countries. Now, because of the connectivity, there's less of a difference. However, only for those who are more connected, because there are areas in Pakistan where people are not so connected. But when we talk about
Just add one thing. So you asked a good question. Okay, what's the difference between Gen Zs here or abroad? And Sami's already answered that. But it's not only about Gen Zs. You talk about what's the difference between boomers and millennials in Pakistan compared to other more developed nations. That's basically what you're saying. And the driving factor is the work environment, the enabling environment, and the opportunities available. So, जो हम पहले बात कर रहे थे, and I think one of the great changes that have come in the workforce habits is based on the workforce benefits, the pay packages and benefits. And I think it was early 2000s when this changed in the wider world, which was your defined benefit schemes came to an end and voluntary or contributory pension schemes started. Which means, and it's a very simplistic thing. क्योंकि आपने हमसे पूछा source क्या है, so I'm giving you, I'm giving you factual statistical based data. देखिए पिछले आप 20 साल पहले चले जाएं, 30 साल पहले चले जाएं, in the more developed world, the longer your duration of service, the greater the pension you got, i.e. the retirement benefits you received. So it was in the interest of individuals not to jump jobs. They stayed with the same company regardless. Even if they hit the glass ceiling, they stayed there. That changed in the outside world from 2000 onwards. So you contribute your own pensions. So there isn't a factor that's keeping them there. So people became more mobile even in the millennial generation. Now, when you come to Gen Z, yes, like as you all already said, they're connected across the world, not just within one community, as you're saying, or within one nation. They see themselves as more of, let's say, a global citizen, so that so their perspectives are much broader than, say, we would have had when we were younger. And the second piece is that when you talk about policies, yes, Pakistan is starting to adopt those changes in workplaces, which happened in other workplaces and in other nations 30 years ago. And as those changes come in, you will see the demands or the working natures of your wider workforce change also. So that's just about it.
As you run out of time, I'll just continue with that and conclude the session by saying that I think the last comment that you made about how some of the workplaces, they've started implementing those changes that were adopted abroad 20, 30 years ago. We need to think very consciously about the kind of change we need to create, and we need to create means, I think one of the panelists commented, all the stakeholders coming together, and the one mentioned that it is the combined responsibility of the colleges, universities, the government, the corporate sector to collectively come together and think about how we need to plan, reimagine this world of work in Pakistan and the multinational as well, but in Pakistan, until and unless we start imagining and creating this, others will move ahead, and also they will redesign the world of work for us as well to a certain extent, because nature has a way of filling voids. If we are not planning, somebody else would be planning for us. And if we want to create the kind of world of work for our next generations, we want to be up to speed with the world, but still have our own some of cultural values, some of our own practices. We need to come together and very proactively think about what kind of a world we want to imagine, reimagine, and we means all of us together for the larger nation. So thank you so much.